All right, welcome everyone to our webinar, Mail America, Solutions that Tie Presort and PostalOne together. I'm Teresa Chang, Marketing Promotions Specialist here at Satori Software, and your moderator for today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the box to the right. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can after the presentation. We have two special guests with us today, Tom Carroll, Technical Services at Mail America. Tom has been with Mail America Communications since 1995. His current technical services position includes support for Monticello, PostalSoft, and PostalOne systems and processes. He handled the technical details of the transition from mainframe to PC and led the implementation of Monticello, DSMS, and full service. He's currently working on taking a sister company from paper statements into the PostalOne environment. Welcome, Tom. Next is Joe Bailey, Director of Monticello Solutions and Industry Relations here at Satori Software. Joe, one of the founding partners of Monticello Software, joined the Satori family in November of 2012 through a recent acquisition. Joe serves on the Mail.dat working group, the Mailing Software Developers Group of ID Alliance, and works on several MTAC groups in conjunction with USPS. Welcome, Joe. So in today's interview, between Joe and Tom will talk about his business problems with his company, what his company has faced, and what they had to do to overcome these challenges. I'll now hand it off to Joe to get this interview started.
Thank you, Teresa. Tom, to get us started here, why don't you tell us a little bit about Mail America Communications and what you guys specialize in?
Sure. Mail America Communications is a full-service direct mail facility. We print, personalize, insert, and mail here under one roof. But Mail America is not just isolated by itself. We're part of a larger family of companies known as QDMH. And as a group, we have over 6 mail production facilities and over 10 brands worldwide. So we've done a full strength. And like Teresa said, we not only have facilities that are currently full service, currently using PostalSoft and Monticello, we also have facilities that we're now transitioning into the full service environment. Teresa gave you a little bit of my background, and I've been involved in a lot of the technical details of not only PostalSoft and Monticello, but also full service in a lot of different areas.
Great, thank you. And what Satori products are you currently using?
Well, currently we're using what was branded the PostalSoft First Prep, Data Write, ACE, Match Consolidate, and Presort software. We're also using Monticello's Mail.DB, PalletDB, and EntryDB software. And of course, under Neopost, there's also GMC software, which we're using as well. So we've kind of got all the software under one roof, as it were. But we have been using these products for a very long time.
Great. And can you share with us what some of the unique pre-sort challenges are with your mailing operations?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know how unique it is, but definitely the challenges that we face is similar in the direct marketing world. We do a lot of ad mail, or marketing mail is our particular niche. So we deal daily with the increase in segmentation of files. So as marketers are getting more sophisticated in targeting customers, they also get more sophisticated in how they are segmenting their pre-sort with different package designs and those type of things. So jobs that we used to do with 1 or 2 pre-sorts, we're now doing 5, 6, 40 different pre-sorts. And so that's added a lot of complexity to our processes. And it really challenges us to find more efficient ways of preparing the work for the post office, also for multiple output devices.
Yeah, I can see. When folks are looking at what solutions will best fit their needs, there's a process that they typically go through, and I was hoping you could share with us some of the steps that you took to identify the best solutions to meet your needs.
Sure. When we chose PostalSoft, we went through a couple-year process. This was in the mid-'90s, right after the 1996 postal reclassification really caused us to look hard at how our current postal vendor was serving our needs. And so we were looking to move off a mainframe into a PC environment. At that point is when we picked PostalSoft, because at that point they were the leader in the PC environment. So that was a pretty rigorous look at the choices. When we got into the 2000s, we were looking at the Presort solution, trying to figure out the best vendor for that. So we, at that time, Mail America was part of, we had some sister companies. We had one sister company that currently used Monticello. We had another sister company that used both Monticello and Windows Books. So we did evaluation, hearing how they use the software and what they saw as the benefits and weaknesses to the software. And we also worked with our freight consolidators who at that time used both software, but we got feedback from them as well. And so we really felt like we wanted to go with the best of breed type solution that would meet our current needs, but also be there in the future for us with all the changes that were going on. So I think that's the way we did the solution, is really doing our due diligence and looking at all the options that were out there.
Gotcha. And I think you mentioned that some of the consolidators pushed you our way as well, in particular for the dismiss system. Do you have an idea of why the consolidators leaned in our direction?
Well, the consolidators definitely had integrated their systems more tightly with Monticello, and that was a big key in moving into the direction of Monticello, just because of the ease of use into the systems. Windows Books, we could still use it, but it wasn't as tightly integrated into the system. And so this, really that integration was the key. We had to go through fewer steps, and we were able to do the implementation a lot easier because of that.
Great. And maybe we can get down to the nuts and bolts a little bit now, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how using post-Presort software helps you in your daily mailing operations.
Well, it's vital. I mean, it's the direct link between our Presort software and with PostalOne, and with the requirements, especially with full service, there are just so many details that we have to keep up with to get files to the post office. The Presort software is just key in taking that Mail.dat from Presort, putting it in the format, doing the validation and checking, make sure we have all the data we need, and then allowing us to create the files that PostalOne requires for us to upload. And so it's really become the key touch point in the process. And then you add to that the additional requirements from the consolidators to incorporate the Mail.dat into their processes, and it becomes a keystone type process for us.
Gotcha. And so could you say that it saved you time or saved you money?
Well, definitely the biggest benefit that we've gotten from it is the ability to work with our consolidators on the dismiss program, the DSMS program with the post office. This allows us to take our prepared mail, ship it early to our consolidator for them to store, so we don't have to have the mail on our floor, and the consolidator can keep track of it in their inventory system for the post office to have access to, and that's been the biggest benefit for us, because we've saved floor space. We've been able to repurpose that floor space for production and not for storage, and so that's been a big plus for us.
Got it. And I know that using any software application, customer support is a real key to the ongoing experience. And I know that especially in the mailing operation, where it can be not only a time critical, but even a mission critical application. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Monticello customer support?
Well, the nice thing about contacting support is it's not a case of you're dealing with a first-tier support that may know one or two little things. You're getting right into a second, third-tier type support situation. So we can get to somebody right away that knows the details, and if they do have to go to a third level, that's usually a pretty quick turnaround to figure out solutions for that. So they're easily accessible by email and phone, and so that's very helpful for us as we try and troubleshoot through the issues. Also, through implementations like onboarding to full service, it's key to have that tech support to help along the way.
Great. Now I know that a lot of the folks on the call today are maybe medium or smaller size mailers, and can you help us to understand how maybe a medium or smaller mailer might be able to cost justify Presort software?
Well, that definitely is a challenge. The post office hasn't made it easy for the smaller and mid-sized mailers. The barrier to entry is still great, even though the post office has improved the whole onboarding process to full service. It's still a process that you need some tool to manipulate a Mail.dat in order to go full service. So it's really a strategy for a smaller medium mailer. From a strategy perspective, are you going to provide full service to your customer? How are you going to serve your customer? Are you going to do it in-house by having the software you need in-house and have the control in-house? Or are you going to have to do an out-of-house type solution like working with a commingler to send your mail to handle all those full service type processes?
Yep. So that you lead into a key question here. Are you full service? And if you are, what was the process like of getting up to speed?
Yeah, we went through the certification process in 2009, and we weren't quite on the bleeding edge at that point, but it was definitely on the cutting edge and one of the early adopters for full service. And it was challenging. I mean, the challenge that I faced trying to do the implementation is between the Presort software, between the Postal software, and between PostalOne. Everybody called things by different names, and to try and figure out the path for that was very challenging. Of course, 2009 is a long time ago. Every one of the software vendors has gotten a lot more sophisticated in presenting the particular setups. Monticello added features for verification and additional features to help with that transition process. And now, I just got our sister company approved for full service, and it was a pretty easy process. Definitely a lot less rigorous than what I had to do in 2009. So the post office has also improved the amount of information. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of details. There are a ton of details to keep up with, and to get everything right, you really have to pay attention and do a lot of reading research still to do that. But there are definitely a lot more tools to make that easier.
Understood. And I think maybe it would be helpful if you could explain to the attendees why you think it's so critical to become full service approved by January of 2014.
Well, I mean, the decision is pretty stark. If you don't have your mail full service compliant by January 2014, you won't get automation rates. So it's pretty clear if you want to get automation rates, you're either going to have to figure out how to be full service inside your plant, or you're going to have to find an outside vendor or commingler to process your mail for you and make it full service compliant. And so it's pretty black and white now what needs to be done.
Got it. And for other folks that are on the phone that might already be using Presort software, what kind of tips do you have for them?
Well, if you're using a Presort, that the trick now is to identify, one, does your Presort software, what onboarding resources or what tools do they already have built into the software to help you become full service compliant? Is there anything out there that does that? Sometimes we get used to using the Presort or Presort software just in our little world. I know for me, we were just focused on, okay, these are just the settings that we need, and when we open up to full service, there's just a whole additional set of settings that we have to be aware of, to learn about, and to make sure we understand how that impacts both full service and the PostalOne system. And so you got to take some time, but don't take too much time because the deadline's quickly approaching, and now's the time to get compliant and not wait till last minute when tech support is really, both from PostalOne and from also the vendors, might be inundated with calls. So now's the time to do it.
Got it. And for those people who are considering this type of a solution but haven't yet made a decision yet, what kind of recommendations do you have for those folks?
Well, do your homework, that's for sure. But the key is asking the questions on integration. So integration is a key. Like I said earlier, that was a key thing for us, is what is the integration with consolidators. Most of the consolidators do deal with multiples, but every consolidator has their preference to what post software that they like to deal with. And so you want to be clear with your consolidators, okay, which one works best and how can this work into the system. But also looking at your processes internally and start to identify, okay, how are you going to deal with tray tag changes? How are you going to deal with the changes to the PAL placards? How are you going to deal with the uniqueness requirement for full service? So all of those are keys, and it's important to know, does your post-sort software handle those requirements that you're looking at?
Got it. So I'm going to dive down into a little bit more detail questions now. And to start out with, I wanted to ask you, how does the pre-validation in the software help you with the PostalOne process?
Well, it's vital. I mean, looking at PostalSoft, and I've looked at other postal software as well. You know, all these required fields now for PostalOne, there's just so many of them and so many to keep up with, and they're scattered throughout your setup. So it's very easy to miss one detail that will fail validation from PostalOne. So it's a lot better to do a validation before the PostalOne validation to try and get everything as squared away as possible. And so Monticello, for one, provides that important link, and there's a couple different validation tools within Monticello to allow us to check what we have done. And so, you know, just on the file load itself, it's doing a validation on it, and then there's a validation when we do our PostalOne preparation is another, and then there are some tools that are provided in the software that will also do validation. So there's a lot of steps along the way to help a user make sure that everything's good before you go try and upload a file to PostalOne. And that's a significant time saver, because you don't want to go through a complete process, wait the minutes to upload a file to PostalOne only to have it fail, and then trying to interpret what the fail code is to go back to Monticello or your Presort to figure out what's missing, what's wrong. So, you know, definitely being proactive and on top of it is a big saver.
Got it. And now, how big are the jobs that you normally process?
Well, we have a pretty wide variety. I mean, we can go down to 200 pieces, and we've gone all the way up to 6 million. So we, last year we did about 385 million pieces of mail. So we have a lot of mail that we push through here, and we use these systems a lot.
Got it. And about how many jobs per week on average do you think you process?
We process about 50 jobs per week, but it really turns out to be more Mail.DATs because of the segmentation. So we're doing 100+ Mail.DATs that we're processing every week.
And how many customers does that represent?
Well, like most mail shops, we've got our top 10 customers, but we service over 50 customers total on an annual basis, and they expect us to be meeting all the postal regulations, and all of them are getting on board for the full service to make sure that they're compliant for January.
Got it. And now you're EDOC and full service compliant and all fully prepared, but let me ask you this, do you still produce paper statements?
Yeah, unfortunately, and we don't like to do it, our DMU clerks don't like to do it, but once in a while, you know, there are hiccups, and PostalOne has been known to hiccup and force us to do paper statements, still with straight first class, or for some very small groups, we'll still do it. Even we've done some every door direct mail, which is a slightly different process. We can go through the postal wizard for those type of things. So yeah, there still is a little bit need for paper statements, but we try and avoid it as much as possible. And really the paper statements right now are kind of a fail-safe. And really, if you're doing full service, you're going to lose your discount, your full service discount, if you go to paper statement. So it's definitely a method of last resort to try and solve any problems.
Understood. Now, I know many mailers have what are called partial releases, where they do a pre-sort on a certain number of pieces and print those pieces, but they only process and get out the door, mailed out on a given day, a part of a mailing, and maybe part of it goes out today and part of it goes out tomorrow and perhaps even the next day. So in that partial release environment, folks have issued, said that it might be a challenge in a full service environment. But are you all doing partial releases in your operations?
We do them all the time. And you can imagine if we're doing a 6 million piece job, we can't store it all in the plant. And it really ties into the dismiss program. So we're releasing jobs through dismiss to the consolidator. From a post office perspective, depending on the project, we might be releasing through the post office over multiple days. And Monticello gives us the ability to easily identify pallets and even down to a tray level of what we're releasing, so we can do those parcels. And then Monticello keeps track of, okay, this is what you've released, this is what is yet to release. So it's really helpful, so we can identify, make sure we're not over-mailing, under-mailing. We're actually releasing what we're actually sending out without forgetting anything. So that's a big benefit. So yeah, partials, we do that all the time.
Got it. Now, how do you handle spoilage?
Well, spoilage is a challenge for us. We have had a couple jobs where a client will call up and they'll say, oh, there's this natural disaster, like Hurricane Sandy. Hey, we don't want to mail to Rockaway Beach, or we have customers who have to get nonprofit authorizations in every state, and they might have missed a state, and so they want us to pull things out. So that's the main type of spoilage that we deal with is mailers changing their mind at the last minute of where they want to mail. And so Monticello allows us to identify those trays and or pallets where that mail exists and actually exclude that from the postal paperwork and from the files that we upload to PostalOne. So that works out pretty easy for us to handle that type of spoilage. And of course that works the same for if you actually did ruin a few trays, or your roof leaked and it leaked on top of a whole pallet worth of mail. Those type of things can be handled in the same way through that spoilage feature within Monticello.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm going to turn it back over to Jorisa now to handle the question and answer period.
Great. Thank you to both Joe and Tom for joining us today. It's always interesting to hear about what a customer has to go through before they can reach their happy ending. All right, so before we jump into Q&A, I would like to mention that we will try to get through as many questions as we can. It looks like we're coming close to our scheduled end time, but definitely stay on the line to hear a little bit of the answers to the questions that have been submitted. If you have questions after the webinar, Joe Bailey's contact information is listed on the screen, so feel free to contact him for any post-pre-sort questions you may have. Bear with me, look at the questions that we have here. So it looks like the first question is, why do you use Mail.dat over Mail.XML? And this could go to either Tom or Joe.
Well, I think a little bit has to do with PostalSoft to start with. So PostalSoft is not producing a Mail.XML right now, and so it is producing a Mail.dat. So it's pretty much easy as that. The second part of that answer is XML is more messaging type paradigm, if you will, and so the Mail.dat is more moving a file. And so the systems that we've been working with, the Mail.dat seems to be the best mode for the systems that we're working with.
I could add to that. I was at a recent ID Alliance meeting, and the Postal Service was presenting, and this is just last week, and they said that in the Edox full service environment that over 60% of the files that are being sent are via Mail.dat, and only 1.4% are Mail.XML, and the remainder are being hand-entered through the wizard. And I think that to expand on what Tom's saying, I've heard it explained that Mail.dat is more of a database orientation, so it's good for submitting all of the nested information that's required for full service, where you have individual pieces nested within trays, nested within pallets, nested within a job. And the XML is a good transaction-oriented structure. So for submitting an individual transaction against a large amount of data, also I think that there are just more applications written around Mail.dat, and it's more widely used. But Mail.dat and Mail.XML are both perfectly viable choices for submitting into PostalOne for full service.
Great. Thanks, Joe, for giving us the differentiation between the two. I think that helped clarify things for a bunch of the attendees out there. The next question is, if only half of the mailing will be ready and the paperwork is submitted on Edox, how do you rework your paperwork when the files are already submitted? Tom?
Well, really, there's no rework required. Basically, when you do the first half of your mailing, you submit it to Edox, and the rest of the mailing is labeled, at least for Monticello, is labeled in there as, hey, you haven't submitted this other half. And so you just the next day you go back through Monticello and say, well, I need to mail the remainder of this job. It shows you the remainder pallets and or trays that are left to mail. You select those, and then you go, and you can create if you need to do a paper statement for backup or for whatever, you can create those statements by selecting those pallets and trays individually. So it's not really a rework process, it's just part of the normal workflow.
All right, well, that's good to know. The next question is the Presort software mainly for mailers who use pallets?
No, I don't. It's not really just for people who do pallets. It just happens that the mailers who use this do palletize because traditionally it's been the bigger mailers that have been doing this. But Monticello also has has the module PalletDB. So if you have unpalletized work, or if you don't have a palletized module for your Presort software, Monticello can do the palletization for you as well.
Okay. We have another question. How far ahead of mail submission do you need to submit the job through Mail.dat?
Well, you can do it the day of the mailing. For our environment, we try not to do it any more than 10 days prior because it makes it harder in PostalOne to search and find a particular job. And also our DMU clerks have been asked from their management to keep their queue clean, and so they've requested us to make sure that the any posted statements out there aren't more than a couple days ahead of when they're actually going to release the mail. So I think that might be a more local issue than a national issue, but there are some preferences there.
Okay. How easy is post-presort software to use? Will I need to have an IT person or a programmer on staff?
Well, definitely training is required. You're going to need to know the software to be able to use it, and having an IT savvy person for updates and upgrades is helpful. But having a full-time IT person and or programmer to keep the software running and going is not really required. The current staff can be trained to use it.
All right. So is the industry moving towards Mail.XML and away from Mail.dat?
I can handle that. I think kind of building on the previous question about Mail.XML and Mail.dat, it's pretty clear that they're certainly not moving away from Mail.dat. Mail.dat is the primary form of data transmission throughout the industry, not just into PostalOne. So I think it's pretty clear that Mail.dat's not going anywhere. There is a move underway to make a sort of a 5-year plan about where things will be 5 years from now, so that the Postal Service doesn't have to maintain 2 different systems. So I think that the most probable solution will be to sort of modify Mail.dat to make sure it meets all of the requirements, and to be able to have one unique file structure that everybody's going to, so that there aren't software application developers as well as the Postal Service redundantly maintaining 2 different systems.
Okay, so we have another question sent in regarding Mail.dat. Are the only Mail.dat forms sent via PostalOne, the postage statement and qualification report, or does it include PVDS? Either Joe or Tom could take this.
Well, part of PostalOne is PVPS, BS, and that's part of it. There isn't a specific qualification report that's uploaded. The information that's in the qualification report is actually included inside the Mail.dat. So the Mail.dat is kind of a self-contained file as part of that. But the Post Office PostalOne system keys off that Mail.dat for that verification system, and that's the entire system that we have here. We have optional procedure, and the Presort verification process is, statistically they look at our work and they decide, okay, what are they going to verify and what ones are they going to let go. So it's all tied together.
I can add to that is in that there are multiple transaction types that occur with PostalOne. One is sort of called a plan file transmission, where you just send all of the data from the entire Mail.dat job to say, in essence, this is what we plan to mail. And the Postal Service system then can build the online qualification report and post it to the dashboard from that submission of data. Another type of transaction would be a postage payment transaction, where you can say, I'm ready to pay postage for these containers within the mailing. Maybe all of the containers, or maybe, as we said, in a partial release environment, maybe only some of the containers. Now, you have to have submitted the plan file, of course, before you can do a postage payment transaction. And there are other types of transactions. There are update transactions and cancel transactions. And we support all of the transaction types within PostalOne, so that you can just select the mail that you want and then perform that type of transaction.
All right, so it looks like we have time for one more question. Couldn't you just rerun the sort through the Presort software with a new mailing date, for instance?
Yeah, you could do that if there's one piece of information needed, or if there's a change, you could run it back through. The challenge is if you're like in our environment where we have some post-Presort steps other than Monticello, is you might be reworking more than just your Presort. So that can be problematic. Also, if you ran a Presort one day and there was a postal directory update or a postal rate change that came into effect in between, then you have some added complexity dealing with differences in postage as well. So definitely, a post-sort solution that allows you to manipulate a Mail.dat outside is very helpful.
Sounds handy. All right. So I just want to note that for all the questions that we couldn't get around to answering, we will be following up on those ones later. But after the presentation, please take a few minutes and complete our short survey. Your feedback will help us improve the quality of our webinars moving forward. Just to let everyone know, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. You can find the session. Under Archive Sessions under the Learn tab. There you go. And we just want to thank you for all the listeners out there for tuning in, and we hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you.